Right now on the Power Chord Hour, we're talking to Mark McMillon, who is singer and guitarist of The Story Changes, as well as lead guitarist and unclean vocalist of Hawthorne Heights. The Story Changes just put out their first new album in over 5 years. The record is called To Hell with This Delicate Equation and is out now on Megaphone Records. The album even debuted at number 10 on Billboard's Heat Seekers, West North Central. We're going to talk about the album and a whole lot more. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. It's super hot in Ohio. I'm home for a couple days and it's it's like kind of unbearable outside and humid, but other than that, I mean, and that's certainly nothing to complain about. So, I'm good.
Very nice. I know you just got off a little quick tour with Hawthorne Heights. You guys did a little run with Emery. How'd that go?
It was great. We haven't really done shows with Imran in a long time, but the band's toured with them quite a bit back in the day, and we're all friends. And it was great to see those guys and see them perform every night. The shows were awesome. This year's kind of an in-between year because we put out Bad Frequencies last year, and toured hard on that, and then we're looking at writing and recording a new record soon. So this year was supposed to be kind of a slower year off the road. So when we got approached about doing some 15-year anniversary stuff, we were excited about it, but at the same time, we didn't want to. I think every old band struggles with this, or older band struggles with this. You want to embrace the new stuff, but you also don't want to like blow off things like anniversary touring and stuff, just because it is fun and it's fun for the fans too. So we kind of looked at it as like, cool, we'll do some 15-year anniversary stuff, but we just can't be gone all year for that kind of thing. And on top of that, we really wanted to do it with Emery, and they are only available certain pockets of time throughout the year. So it kind of forced our hand into the tour having to be in like shorter legs, which is something we're not really accustomed to. Like this first leg was only 2 weeks long, but it ended up being awesome. It made the whole thing as a whole, like anything, when you go out for work that long, no matter how cool your job is, after like when you go on tour for like a month and a half, by the end of it you just get a little worn out and ready to go home. And the 2 week time frame is kind of great because no one ever got too stressed and too wore out, and it was awesome. We're doing a second leg on the West Coast in like Texas and stuff in August, and I'm super excited about that.
And now, does you guys are doing that with Emery as well?
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, the 2 week stints seem like that's like the perfect amount of time. It seems like it's not 2 months or anything like that. That's kind of like a perfect spot before I'm sure you get kind of tired of that. But yeah, either way, it
Yeah.
sounds like you're stoked to be home for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a nice to break it up. And we're actually home for some chunks this summer, which is something that's rare. I think we've only been home like 2 summers in the last 10 years. So
Oh,
it's
jeez.
kind of nice to kind of like spend a little bit of it at home.
I
It's
can
cool.
imagine. I
Yeah.
wanna talk about the new Story Changes record, and I did notice that you ended up building a home studio and self producing To Hell with This Delicate Equation. I mean, how was it self producing this? Was this the first time you guys did that for a Story Changes record?
Yeah. It was awesome. It was kind of terrifying at first, but essentially, I've been involved in like demoing um, the story records for a long time. Like every time we go and do a record, we always kind of record our demos at home beforehand. And even in our earliest days, we did this, but it was just kind of like rough 4-track stuff. Um, and then up to the last couple of things we did more involved demos. I started building this, like my home studio, started about a year and a half prior to when we started tracking the record, with the intention of just kind of upping my game to demo the Hawthorne Heights record here. So we ended up demoing Bad Frequencies at my house, and I just kind of went on a binge and got some newer gear and kind of updated the space a little bit, and kind of moved everything into a section. A lot of stuff was kind of scattered around my house, and kind of just made like a nice space for all that together. And then after we demoed the Hawthorne record, I just loved that whole process of working on the songs here. And on a side note, I think that's the most prepared have ever been for a Hawthorne record. Like when we went in to record that record in the real studio, um, we booked like close to a month of time, and I think we were done in like 12 days or something.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, we were like done so early. So we ended up coming home and it had the engineer just apply those days that we had paid for to start mixing the record early. So it was cool. It was a nice feeling of being like everyone was prepared and just basically had to go in and already knew what they wanted to do on it, you know? Um, so to tie it all into the question, so when it came time to do the Story Changes record this time, the hardest part initially about getting, we had the songs, and the hardest part about it was kind of figuring out a block of time where I could block off a couple weeks to go to the studio, just because our schedule with Hawthorne Heights is kind of all over the place all the time. Went about it as like, let's just start demoing the record here with the intention of maybe that'll end up being the record. And at first it was kind of scary, but once we kind of got a rhythm for it and like a kind of a workflow, it ended up being awesome. It makes me never want to go to like a big studio again. So fun. I tracked all the guitars in my pajamas. It was awesome.
So, I mean, that seems then you'll keep going down that path. And I mean, I got to give you some compliments here. I did not realize it was self-produced until a couple days ago. I thought that
Awesome.
either Jamie or someone produced it. I think it's one of your best sounding records. So, I mean,
Thank you.
that's
Yeah, and I mean, and I like I'll give Jamie Wolford a ton of credit. Jamie Wolford is who mixed the record, and he's also the guy that recorded and produced a lot of the earlier Story Changes stuff. And he did a fantastic job mixing the record. Um, but he kind of knew exactly what we wanted, and after working with him so many times over the years, like we kind of had an idea of how to record it in a way that if Jamie got his hands on it, he'd make it sound like a Story Changes record, you know? So it was cool.
does that like blow your mind that you can do this now, like in your home? I was talking to we had Tim from Alistair on here a few months ago, and
Yeah.
they did a lot of they just put out a best of where they re-recorded a bunch of their old stuff, and he was telling me
Yeah.
the same thing. He's like, yeah, we did most of that at home. I'm like, this thing sounds great. Where'd you record it? He's like, my bedroom. It's
Yeah,
I mean,
it's insane. Um, it's amazing that how far the technology's come, and it's pretty wild. We recorded drums in a studio. We recorded drums with Micah Carley. He used to play in Hawthorne with me in Troy, Ohio, at his studio. Um, just because drums are the one thing with a home studio, it's just really hard to get it kind of right, unless you have like the nice big open room with the proper acoustics for it and like a really insanely nice mic collection. But we did the drums there and then did everything else in my house. And then and the beauty of it was just doing it here just allowed for us to take our time and took all the stress away. Like normally when we've had to record a Story Changes record or even a Hawthorne record, there's always just a deadline, a set time, and it always usually can't budge because you've rented out the studio for that day and have the recording engineer for that day. And if anything runs behind or gets switched around, then you have to reschedule, and then that puts you back like they're usually booked up for a couple months at a time, and then you're just dealing with like your touring schedule's already playing out for 6 months. So it's kind of nerve wracking because like everything about the process is like you have to book it so far in advance, and then you have to make sure you have to have the songs ready by then and finished, and it kind of and in one way it forces your hand to be ready, but this time around with doing it at home, we had no deadline at all. So we just made the decision that for the Story Changes records, we didn't owe any when we started recording it. We weren't signed to anyone. It didn't owe anyone a record or anything. So it was kind of a nice feeling just to do it at home, take our time. And the only rule we made was like, it's not done till it's done, and we'll know when it's done. And we essentially just whenever we were home from tour, I would just kind of work on it in like spurts of time and just kind of pick up where we left off, which took a long time to get it done, but it was extremely satisfying to know that the end result was something that wasn't like really forced or rushed or anything.
and I think you kind of answered this next question, but I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the band's first full length since 2013, Static and Trembling. So it sounds like,
Yeah,
I mean, with that much time in between, it sounds like it benefited the band. I mean, like, because I feel like sometimes that can be, you have almost too much time to overthink things, but it sounds like it went the other way and it kind of worked in your favor. And you guys had time to
yeah,
like really work out a more like thorough idea of an album. Do you
yeah,
feel that way?
for sure. I mean, I think another part of that too was, Story Changes has been a band for I think about 15 years now, and
Wow.
we went we went so hard the first 8 or 9 years, toured quite a bit, and was just doing it constantly. That like even the first, because I've been playing with Hawthorne for over 9 years now, and even the first few years that I was playing with Hawthorne, like Story was still super active. I was just always gone. I'd get him from Hawthorne and would immediately leave for Story Changes tour. And I think right around the time after we finished Static and Trembling and that came out, I just hit a spot where I was like, something has to kind of give a little. Just was so busy with both projects. So it slowed down a little as far as the full length front. But kind of what we found also that benefited us is we put out a good deal of music in between that record and this record. We just did it in the form of like we put out a couple different singles. We put out an EP, the Never in Daydream EP that we did with Little Heart Records, which is cool. And like the Photograph 7-inch, we did that a couple years ago. So we kind of got our fix for putting stuff out with just focusing on like a few songs at a time. And that was super fun for a while and kind of gave us a chance to breathe. And because when you do a full length record, it's just a lot to take on with that many songs. But I think after 3 or 4 years of that, we kind of got the itch to do a full length again and really kind of ramped it up and started writing this record over the last couple of years.
And I mean, real quick for people who might not be familiar with the Story Changes, I mean, how did the band did start as a duo with you and Poppy? How did you guys get the band going?
It started like both of us were involved in other bands, and I was kind of doing a pop punk band that kind of fizzled out and kind of turned into this. And we originally started touring as a three piece. Had a friend in town that was playing bass and did that for a couple years, and then when it fizzled out with the other member, with the bass player, we just decided we had some other friends filling in. Actually, Matt Jenkins from that's done merch for Hawthorne Heights for a long time, off and on. That runs Future Destination Records. Like he filled in on bass for a couple tours.
Kind of a side note to that too. All our buttons, if anyone listening has our Power
Oh
Chord
yeah,
Hour buttons, those were made by him.
yeah. He owns a button company. He's awesome. It's like the cheapest and quickest turnaround for buttons that you'll ever find on the internet. He's awesome. It's thinktwicebuttons.com. But yeah, he played with us for a while, filled in to kind of help us out. Right around the time our second record came out. And we had just various friends filling in, and then at some point a lot of our friends that were filling in were from out of town. So when we would rehearse as a two piece, running like loops and stuff like that to fill it out. And this was kind of a few years back before a lot of bands were running tracks and stuff. It really wasn't a normal thing. And I forget how it happened, but essentially like somebody we had set to fill in for a tour couldn't make it, so we just did it as a two piece. And 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 everyone loved it. Like all the kids on tour were like, that have seen us a bunch over the years, were like, that's awesome. Like it's really cool just seeing the two of you on stage. So we kind of just did it like that for a long time. Like for the longest history of the band, it was just the two of us. And it's always been super fun, and we got to do a lot of touring like that. Like my first few tours that I did in Hawthorne Heights, like we were out, like Story Changers was out supporting them, so I just played in both bands, which was kind of fun, but also like an exhausting night.
I
But
can
there was
imagine.
like 2 summers looking back, I'm like, man, how did I do that? I was like on stage. I was basically on stage all summer, but it was super fun. And then just recently, and in the last 3 years, we've been playing with another dude. We weren't ever going to get another guy because it just works so well with the two of us. Specifically, when I was always gone with Hawthorne and then we'd come home. And Chris, we call him Poppy, our drummer. It was just so easy to make one call to figure out when we could get together and rehearse and play shows. And then in the last few years, my bandmate in Story Changes, Chris, has been playing in Hawthorne Heights as well. So that's made it super easier to know when we can play Story Changes shows and kind of schedule around it. So we weren't going to get another guy. And then a few years ago, probably 3 years ago now, a good friend of ours, Chris Serafini, he was in one of my all-time favorite bands called The Stereo.
Great band.
Yeah, an amazing band. He was in Pollen, which was a great Fueled by Ramen's record band back in the day. They did a bunch of touring with like Descendants and all. And he was in that band Let Go that the Story Changes did a split with. And he actually played bass on all of our songs on that split. And um, we've just toured with him off and on with bands he's been in over the years. A ton of time. So we've spent a lot of time on the road. We knew we got along really well. He's always been like one of my best friends. And he was living in Arizona for the last decade. And he just recently moved back to Pittsburgh, where he's from. And, the long story short, we just kind of connected again. And he had just finished up a 2-year stint of playing bass in the Gym Blossoms,
Oh,
where
really?
he was kind of filling in for them. Their guy had some like family life stuff going on, so he got approached about doing that. So he had played for them for a couple years, and then when that was done, kind of they had like a time frame set, and then when the bass player was coming back, that's when Chris, him and his wife decided at that point, like they were already kind of thinking about moving back to Pittsburgh, so they just decided to move back. So he moved back. Had just finished like playing with that band and didn't have anything else going on. He just kind of hit me up, and we started talking about it. And we weren't really looking to get another guy, but he just kind of happened, and it's awesome. He's a shredder and a great friend, and it really says something about how good he is and how good of friends we are that we were a two-piece band for 8 years and never had anyone else on stage with us. And we did our first like little tour with Chris, and it never felt weird, not even from the first rehearsal. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it should have felt weird, but it never did. It just felt right. So like he's awesome. He's a great dude. He's got so many great stories. Like I've known that dude for what feels like half my life, and to this day, when after a show, when we sit back and crack open a beer or something, he'll start talking about like some crazy tour story. And to this day, there's so many new ones that I haven't heard before. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
I really like the new album title, "To Hell with This Delicate Equation." I was wondering, what is the meaning of that?
That's basically like with the Story Changes specifically, but I also feel like even like with what I've learned in Hawthorne, like with being a band for that long, you kind of get in this rut where, and I don't want to call it a rut, but where people have a set way that they expect you to sound, or like how to be as a band. So when we were writing songs for this, it was like, you start writing a song and you're just like, whoa, like this record's got a little more like aggressive. It's a little more like aggressive vocals to it, and some of the songs are. I mean, the Story Changes has always kind of had some heavier stuff, but some of the stuff on the new ones, there's a different vibe to it. And when we were putting some of the songs together, I was like, man, does this fit with what people would expect the Story Changes record to be? And at some point, we were just like, screw that, like to hell with that, like let's let's just write a record, and who cares what it's supposed to sound like, or like how it's supposed to fit in with every genre we're supposed to be, and let's just do what we want to do, that kind of thing. And that became kind of the theme for the record. And then lyrically, I kind of took that and applied that to, I think, like um, as I'm getting a little older, I've learned that in my life too. There's like a certain way that you're supposed to be, and I think all of us kind of growing up, like listening to punk rock and stuff, it's still instilled in us, like, screw that, like I'm going to be the person I want to be, and I'm not going to be labeled and blah 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 and that whole thing. So I think it kind of applied to just musically, and um, just living your life is like not within any sort of particular set of rules that society's kind of put out there.
That's cool. I like that. I really like that. There's definitely a '90s influence sound, I would say, on parts of the record. Was that a conscious effort, or is that just kind of influences coming through, just what you tend to listen to?
A little bit of both, not super conscious, but I think around the time when we recorded Static and Trembling, which was our last full length prior, that was the first time a lot of the kind of 90s stuff started creeping in, and it got a little less kind of pop punk and more like pop punk 90s with 90s influences. And um, little grungy, I guess. And it was a little more conscious effort on that record to like, hey, let's start letting this creep in. And then we did the follow up to that was the Never End Daydream EP, and that went super 90s. Um, and then this was kind of like at this point with the new record, we didn't really think about it anymore. I think we just got reached a spot where we're like, okay, let's just throw out the rules, and now we're super comfortable, kind of letting the '90s shine. So let's just do it, you know. So
I,
I love that. I love that era of music. It's like what I grew up on, and it's probably it's like my go-to when if I'm driving the van or in the tour bus or whatever. Like I'm just all about like late '90s kind of indie punk.
that's what I was wondering too, because I mean the album doesn't even sound like it's just a like a straight '90s record or anything like that. But you hear
Yeah,
the influence, I think, on there. But I think it works well. It kind of builds on what you guys have already been doing, and I think it
thanks.
sounds really good. And kind of, I would compare it in this way, that the guitars sound really big on the new album, almost like in a Jawbreaker way, where I know you're the only guitar player, but the guitars sound like massive. They sound really good. What was your guitar
Thanks.
rig like for this?
Um, I'm a big kind of Marshally type guy, and I was using like I have a JCM 800 like SLX or JCM 900 SLX that I've had for years. That was on the first couple Story records. I used that. I've been working with a great company called Black Star the last few years, and I used their MK2 head on this. I honestly used quite a bit of just like the 11 rack guitar plug-in stuff for a lot of the leads. Like I've never been a huge like digital modeling type guy, but for some of the lead stuff, particularly when I was writing the record and working on it late, I it'd be like super late and my wife would be upstairs asleep, so I couldn't like crank up an amp, you know. So I would essentially do it with like, oh, I'm gonna use this to kind of work on writing the parts, and then I'll retrack them later with an amp. And some of those tracks ended up being so cool that I was just like, I'm not gonna retrack this because like it sounds that good, you know. I was super. I guess I didn't think some of like the lead parts and stuff. I was like, I don't think I could get a better sound miking the amp, so I'm just not gonna mess with it. You know, it's amazing how far that technology's come
It really is. It
with all
goes
that
back to,
stuff.
I mean, we were talking about earlier. It's like, yeah, I mean, you go back to the days of, okay, you could demo things on, a 4 track in your bedroom, but like now, like you're saying, it's like you can do the final product there. You don't just have to like demo things. You can record an entire album, which is
Yeah,
just, it's cool.
it's insane. I just like total side note. I just kind of invested and got some more toys for the studio. Not a whole lot of stuff, but like I've never messed with any of the Universal Audio stuff, and they're like Marshall guitar plugins are ridiculous. They're like I'm like 2 days into playing around with this thing, and it's like it makes me never want to record with a real one because it's like it sounds so good. So it's pretty rad.
That's cool. How did you end up joining Hawthorne Heights? I know we mentioned it earlier. I mean, you've been doing it now for almost a decade. How did you
Yeah.
originally get in?
Well, you know, I've known those guys forever. Was just talking about this with JT the other day. I was in a band called Rod. It was like an old pop punk band I did, and I played the 123 Club in Morgantown, West Virginia, and met the singer of JT's old band, Late Start, and then through that got in touch with them and like traded stuff, and then eventually JT moved to Ohio, and met him at a show, and we've always been friends. And I've known Matt from all the bands Matt was in over the years, just to play shows with my old bands, and um, you know, Casey and Mike and Aaron knew them really well too, and so we'd always been friends. And Poppy, Story Changes drummer, was friends with him. When we started the Story Changes, one of our earliest shows was Hawthorne had us supporting them at their hometown release party for the Silence in Black and White. Um, so it's kind of cool that we got to do that, and that was just fun because these were our friends and we wanted to support them putting out their records. So they asked us to play. They were going on tour. They asked us to play that show, And we're like, cool. And the show was just going to be at the Knights of Columbus Hall, which is the rental hall where we threw all of our all ages shows. And we're like, cool. And then they went on that tour, and the band slowly started like blowing up on that tour because the record was doing really well. So it was such a cool thing to see. It was so cool to like keep in contact and hear from them and hear how good things were going, and be like, that's cool, but it's until you see it, you don't really get a grasp on it. And we showed up to that show, and there was like a bazillion kids out in the parking lot that couldn't get in because the show was so packed. It was like that kind
Nice.
of thing. You're like, whoa, this is like, you're seeing it firsthand. Like there is like something really special going on right now. So it's so cool to do that. And they took us on a lot of early shows and stuff, which was cool. I remember we played the Creepy Crawl in St. Louis together when they were promoting that record, and it was sold out. It was like oversold and super crowded, and uh, like so sweaty you could just see like the precipitation in the air. JT got shocked on the microphone
Oh,
probably because of
geez.
how like wet it was in the club with electricity. But so no, we just stayed in contact, and then friends over the years, and then um years later they were doing Skeletons, and um they didn't finish all the backing vocals they wanted on that record when they were in the studio, which is a weird contrast because they did that record with Howard Benson, and then which is like, and they that record's cost $1 bazillion to wind up spending a ton of money. So they went to this massive studio, and like it sounds so good. And then they to finish the backing vocals, they just were like, okay, we'll just do them at home, and they did it in a basement. So, so totally so punk of them. It was cool. So they got a hold of me, and I got to come out and do some backing vocals on that record. And we had all like stayed in touch over the years, but they had went on to like be on tour constantly, and Story Changes was still grinding, and we were on tour constantly. So it was, even though we were friends and still living in the same town, stayed in touch. We just didn't see each other as much, and so it was cool. Came in and did some vocals on that and kind of reconnected. And the tour they did, the first tour they did leading up to that record, they invited Story Changes out to come on the tour, which was super cool. It was a really big tour for us. And so I came out, and we just, it was like, and they had Night Beast out too, which is when Night Beast was still just a solo artist, and who's also from our hometown. So it was like a super fun tour, and we all kind of reconnected, and we ended up staying in the same hotels every night, a lot of times just crashing same rooms together and hanging out all night, and just really reconnecting again. It was like a month and a half of touring, and it was great. And then got them from that, and we just all stayed in touch. And I think it's something they had been talking about for a while with bringing in a guitar player, but I just think it was never something that felt right yet. And excuse me. And so when that record was coming out, a lot of the songs on that record had guitar parts that were kind of hard to sing and play, like multiple guitar parts, and it was just hard for them um, with JT singing and playing to do them. To have someone who's singing while playing the guitar, to have them play the other guitar part essentially. So they approached me about coming in, and it was cool. I was just like, oh, let's try it and see how it goes. And it was one of those things that I came in, and we had a rehearsal just to try it, with no plans, and then it turned into like, cool, this was great. They were like, do you want to play a show next week? And I was like, yeah, how many songs? And it was like an 18-song set or something. So I was like, cool. And then I was like, I'll learn it, we'll see how it goes. And I think the mentality was like from the get-go, it was just like, this sounds cool, let's just do it. And if there ever isn't anything you can't do, like show wise, don't worry about it, we'll do it without you, and just go from there. And then it was like, fast forward, it's been like 9.5 years or whatever, and they haven't played a show without me, so I guess I'm here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking yesterday. It's like, I mean, obviously, I've seen you guys like countless times, and of all those times, I think only one. The first time I saw them in 2009 was the only show I've ever seen without you, which is insane to
Yeah,
think now because it feels like I can't believe it's almost been 10 years. I'm like, oh yeah, you've been in the band. I mean, I first saw you. I think you played a show with them at the Grog Shop with Bayside in like
yeah.
2010, and that would have been
Oh,
like
it's
the
such a
first time I
fun
saw
show.
you. Yeah, that was
That
that
was
was a
such a fun show.
the first time I saw
Yeah,
you play with them, and that was only the second time seeing them. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
insane to think how long you've been. And you're not even the new guy. Poppy's now, and Poppy's been in how many years? But now he's the new guy, I guess.
Yeah, probably 4, I think,
Wow.
maybe.
Yeah,
Which
that.
is that blows my mind even more, you know. But he's always kind of been around because even when I started playing with Hawthorne, um, Poppy was like tour managing us or coming out on the road and stuff. Just kind of working with the band in one way or another. So um, that's why when Aaron left, and Aaron left on good terms, our old Hawthorne's our drummer. He just his daughter was getting older, and he wanted to spend more time at home with her. Also, he had a company he'd been working on, and he got a great opportunity for that. Um, and there never was any like, who should we try out or anything. It was just like, oh, Poppy's already here. Poppy's awesome. He's our friend. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was like no brainer. It was like, Poppy, you're playing drums now. So
No,
that's been great too.
he fits good
So
with the band and everything too. It seems like
yeah,
everything's worked out really well for everyone.
yeah. That's one thing that's I've always loved about Hawthorne Heights is that like for a band that's had multiple gold records or whatever, or I guess we'll just say like for a band that's had like mainstream like success, like everything about it has still been within like their hometown and like kind of their punk roots and stuff. Like, and I, not that I think the band's like super punk rock or anything it's sounding, but I think everything about the way that we've operated and how they operated before has been very like honest and true to themselves and kind of like doing it their own way. And for a band like that to replace members with just like, oh, we'll get these dudes that are from our hometown. I mean, they could audition and got whoever, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like, and they were like, no, these are two guys you know, that are working hard in our hometown and really doing it, and that's awesome. So
No, and
kudos
I
to them.
think I think you're right about that too. I mean, just even from an outside perspective, I mean, yeah, absolutely. A band who's had massive success and has sold a lot of records, and some of the most down to earth guys. I mean, all of you guys in that camp, and you're all very do it yourself. I mean, I think that's admirable too. A band who, from the beginning, kind of with that success and doing what you got to do. Music industry shifts and changes, and you become, you do things that you have to do. You do it yourself. And I mean, I think all you guys have been really smart with that. And I think that's why it works. That's why you guys are still here. You're not doing reunion
Yeah, I
shows.
agree.
You've never left.
Yeah, I agree. We've just all of us came from backgrounds where we've had to work really hard, and no one in either band's had anything kind of handed to them. So it's like um, at this point, it's like we just still feel very lucky and fortunate to be able to do this and be able to go all over the world and have people that that care that much about our music that we can still do that. Like it's super cool that like the emo punk thing and is like there's like this nostalgia and resurgence of that kind of thing, and there's like the emo night things, and um and that's translated over to like all the similar bands and us are like there's more hype about it again. But like even 7 years ago when that wasn't an issue and like people were just like you know what I mean, like, is it hard doing this? And it's just like, dude, I grew up working hard construction before like music went well for me. So it's like it's just like any other job. If you love it and you do it, it's like this is amazing. I get to pay my bills playing music.
That's
Like
awesome.
I think there's like a misconception with people when like a band starts playing an arena or something, and then a fast forward like a few years later they're playing like a 500 cap club or something. People were just like, oh man, like that's not the heyday. Do you miss that? And it's just like, well, no. But I mean, it's like this is awesome still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Well, and
we're just
band shift too. I don't think people
yeah,
realize that. Where it's like things, nothing, trends and whatnot. Things just shift back and forth. I mean, that's just how it goes. I don't
yeah,
think anyone has like very few bands. I think have a really like straight line career that doesn't go up or down. You know what I mean? Like I just don't think that happens much in the music industry.
yeah. I don't think it ever truly did, and it's certainly not anymore. And it's just one of those things. It's why I always tell young bands, they're like, what's the one advice or whatever, and I'm like, just make sure you love doing it, because if you love doing it, then it's great. Like because it is a lot of work. Even when it's going really good, it's a lot of work. So much so that it's like if you don't love it, it's never going to be worth it. you know. But if you love it and you love getting out there playing your songs, and it's then it's the absolute best, you know. It's cool. Like it's the coolest. I use the word job loosely, but it's the coolest job I've ever or will ever have. Like getting just to go out and meet people and play music that we wrote and get to see the world doing it. It's pretty awesome.
It sounds. I mean, it absolutely sounds like it. And, as we kind of wind up here, the band did just release a great music video for "Shooting Stars." We're gonna play that here after the interview, as well as a bunch of
Cool.
other stuff off the album. But I really like the new music video. It's very funny, set in a bowling alley. Where did you guys end up filming that at?
You know that that is in it's in a roller rink, and it's in a it's Skate World in Vandalia, Ohio, which is actually the skating rink that I went to growing up.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and which is pretty cool. I wasn't super into roller skating or anything, but it was like growing up, it was like on the weekends that was like a hangout spot. And I mean, I'm talking like, you know, 11 or 12, young. We would go there to play video games and stuff, arcade games and stuff. And yeah, it was cool. I've had the ideal of doing that video for a while, and it just didn't work out until now. And there's a really cool production company from our hometown that's called Sound Valley Dayton. And I spoke with them about if they'd want to do it. Ashley, who directed the video, was super into the idea. She loved the kind of the treatment I put together for it, and storyline. And I was on tour, like a long tour promoting Bad Frequency. So I just essentially told her like, this is what I want to do. Can we find a location? And Skate World Vandalia was my number one spot that I wanted to do it, and she nailed it. She somehow talked them into letting us do it there because they don't normally let like people come in for private things. And it was awesome. It was like the best part is I have not been in that building in 20 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
and I walked in and it was a time capsule. It was exactly the same as when I went when I was younger. So it was pretty cool.
That's very neat. So it sounds like then the rest of the year, I mean, what can people expect from you with the story changes in Hawthorne Heights? I mean, we're going to get a little bit of touring then from each of them.
Yeah, Hawthorne's doing a second leg of the 15-year anniversary shows, which is super fun. We're playing Silence from front to back, and then we're also playing like a pretty long list of additional songs. It's been cool because we're throwing in a few things that we haven't done, if ever, like if years, if ever, we haven't done. And then we're doing next actually Tuesday. I leave for some festivals. We're doing Summerfest in Milwaukee with Taking Back Sunday, and then we're doing July 5th, we're doing Quebec City with Saves the Day and Taking Back Sunday. So that'll be
Oh,
fun. Um, and we've got our annual Dayton is for Lovers show coming up on July 12th in Dayton at the Yellow Cab. Story Changes is going to be doing some more stuff. We did a little bit of touring for the record, did some shows. We were just out over this weekend, got to see some of the Punchline guys and some other projects they're doing. And with really cool band called Pack that Chris is doing. We played with.
oh, nice.
It's got Justin from Juliana Theory, one of the guys from Zayo's in it, but it was really cool. Shoot, he had another band that played called Sweet or called Another Cheetah.
Oh
That
yeah, I've heard I heard one of their songs that he
yeah,
put up.
Paul's in it, and PJ
PJ too,
Punchline Soul.
right?
Yeah, and they were great. Yeah, they were super cool. So it was really good to see those guys. It's a total side thing, but I can't not plug those guys.
Got to give Punchline some love. We always do on this show.
Yeah, oh, they're so good. But yeah, Story's going to be doing some more stuff. We're getting ready to announce a couple regional things, like a Cincinnati and Ohio date, and we're looking to like late September, early October, do another round of touring for the record, probably through the Midwest and some East Coast. But yeah, and then Hawthorne's got some other stuff that we'll be announcing soon for the end of the year. But it should be cool. And yeah, I mean we're just really stoked on how the Story record turned out, and it's just there's not a ton of opportunities to tour on it because we're so busy with Hawthorne, but we're just excited that everybody's been digging it so much and checking it all online. Like I did not in a million years expect to. I mean, we knew it would do okay, but the reactions have been so good, so we didn't expect to be this good. So we're super excited
I mean,
about that.
that's awesome. I honestly, I mean, I've always liked the band. I think this is the best thing you guys have released easily.
Thanks.
I think it's the best album. So, I mean, kind of closing up, where can people find you online, staying connected with you?
Just thestorychanges.com. If you go there, there's the video. You can watch the video there for Shooting Stars. There's a link on the top to check it out on Spotify. Then at the bottom, there's like links to stream the record on whatever platform you want, or to check out our merch store. So, and we do have it on. I think we still have all 3 variants of the vinyl left, and CDs and all that fun stuff.
Very nice. So go check it out. To hell with this delicate equation, New Story Changes record. Mark, this has been fun. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do this, man. We've been talking about doing it for a while. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, and right now here is Shooting Stars right here on the Power Chord Hour.